Hey there, everyone. Welcome back into our Hangout series as part of Innovation for the Nation. James Hilliard here, and our next session is going to move us a bit further north in Florida. We were just down in Orange County talking to the Orange County Sheriff's Department. We'll be moving up to the Tallahassee region in just a moment here. First, I want to address an item I saw come across over on Twitter. Marty was using the hashtag IFTN13 and asking if folks knew about a community of IT professionals within government, and if you have any ideas, thoughts of communities that Marty and others might be interested in joining, exploring, then get on over to Twitter again, hashtag IFTN13. And to Marty and everyone else, I can also recommend on Google Plus, if you search for the Google Government Community, you can join that. And we're going to, not only is there information there and has been, but it's an area where you can continue to get information coming from Google and from other Google Plus community users. So it's the Google Government Community that you want to check there on Google Plus. As for this session, again, moving a bit further north in the state of Florida up to the Tallahassee region, we're going to be joined by Bill Stewart here shortly, the Executive Vice President of Solutions from Pondera Solutions. And let me tell you what we're going to do for this next about 25 minutes or so here. This session titled Faster, Better, Cheaper, Improving Fraud Detection Efficiency. I think the grand thesis for this conversation is this has been a long time problem. And the problem has been one that many of you listening, I'm sure, have dealt with, right? Those improper payments, be it medical in nature, unemployment, could be public housing, public assistance, food, things like that. The idea is that money gets into the wrong hands, and the headache that you have of trying to go back and track down funds, get those returned. The story that we're going to hear now is how to really drastically cut down on that problem and really try and get ahead of it. For I think what many of you will have is the first time ever with the use of technology, because the stories I've heard, technologies have been out there, but it's still just been this nagging problem for many groups. Again, Bill Stewart with us from Pondera Solutions. He not only is in charge right now of product development and vendor relationships along Pondera's vertical solutions, but prior to his job there, he served as Deputy Chief of Staff for the Florida Attorney General, where he oversaw Medicaid fraud prevention efforts. So he knows firsthand how difficult this has been. When talking to Bill just prior to going live here, one of the things that he had said in terms of addressing this improper payment issue and challenge, game-changing is what he used to talk about what they've been able to create by working with Google. So that's, Bill, what I want to use as our jumping off point for this story. Welcome to you, and we appreciate you joining Innovation for the Nation this week.
Great. Thank you, James. I'm definitely excited to talk with you all today. And share the Pondera story in conjunction with Google's about what we're doing in the fraud detection arena. And really what we're going to talk about is how Pondera, through the FDAS service, or Fraud Detection as a Service, is leveraging the power of Google to detect and prevent fraud. What I mean by that is that what we have is a unified ecosystem of Google capabilities and processing capabilities, for that matter, to go after, to find, to locate, to root out those needles in the haystack that are oftentimes overlooked. And I think that's really where the game-changing aspects of this come in. So just from a generic standpoint, the amount of improper payments, I think that we all understand, whether they be from the federal or state perspective, is quite huge. A little over 2,100 federal subsidy programs, not to mention the state and local programs as well, all run about an average of 10% as far as the fraud rate is concerned. Some programs are higher, some may be a little bit lower. So how are we going after bad actors? What are we doing that is a game changer in this arena? And I think what it is that we're doing, and we'll allude to this and touch on this in the demo that we'll get into in just a few minutes, is that we're really connecting the actions of the physical world to the data-driven world. By bringing in the Google Cloud, Google's advanced predictive analytics, leveraging data from our third-party partners that we're bringing to bear on the vexing problem of fraud detection. But there's one additional issue that I want to mention to you that we all suffer from, whether it is from the investigator who is working with the data set or whether it is from the actual fraud detection methodology or the solution that they've employed to go after fraud. And so what I want to do is quickly illustrate this problem to you so you understand what I'm talking about. I'm going to flash the phrase up on the screen, and if everybody would just read it to themselves, say it aloud. It'd only be for a few seconds as we don't have much time, but I just want you to read this phrase aloud. So the phrase is, okay, so basically what we all saw was a very simple phrase, one that we all know, I love Paris in the springtime. And that phrase evokes a lot of emotion. It brings a lot of, I think, tangential feelings to the table. You know, we all have different thoughts about Paris. We all have different thoughts about springtime. But basically, when we read this phrase, we're bringing baggage into that phrase and how we interpret that phrase, how we understand what's going on. So there's a problem with that, though. What you actually saw was not "I love Paris in the springtime," but "I love Paris in the springtime." So I would probably guess that maybe 99% of the folks out there, their mind read that phrase very quickly and then said, all right, I know what it says. I said it to myself. I heard myself say, "I love Paris in the springtime," but actually what was on the screen was "I love Paris in the springtime." The reason why that is, and that's how this plays into fraud detection, is that our minds have an amazing ability to overlook details once we comprehend or once our mind assumes it knows the big picture. We experience this all the time when we're driving to a new place. Along the way, when we're going there originally, it seems like it takes forever. We're looking at every street. We're looking at every billboard. We're looking for the cross street. We don't want to miss our turn, and it seems like that trip takes a lot longer. But on the way home, what happens is that our mind actually ejects the smaller details that it no longer views as relevant, and we're then just looking at major landmarks along the way and passing all the superfluous information in between. So going from A to E, on the way there, we hit A, B, C, D, E. On the way home, we may have hit A, C, and only E, skipping all the letters in between. This is a fundamental problem because it's a quirk that our mind has, which helps us on a daily basis because there's so much data for us to intake and process. But for an investigator, this is a horrible attribute to overcome. It's called investigative blindness. From the fraud detection perspective, it also works against us as well. So the solutions that are in the marketplace today actually take fraud detection and they put it in boxes. Let's say box A, B, and C. And that solution spits out results, pre-canned results from box A, B, and C. The investigator then receives results from box A, B, and C compounded with a ton of paper, the baggage that he's brought into, you know, from his years of investigations, his intuition, and he looks at paper and reports and gets just tremendous volume coming at him. So what's happening with him is that he's also overlooking the details, as are the solution that he's using to provide him those details. With this in mind, there's no wonder why the fraud problem is quite rampant, quite large, and those who are looking to deceive can actually exploit this hole because they're aware of the quirks and how our minds actually solve problems and how we oftentimes, as the picture to the left demonstrates, we see the forest but not necessarily the trees. So a superb investigator is trained to look for the trees and not necessarily the forest. So this is a fundamental issue as to how our solution is different, is that we actually let the data drive the solution. We do not come to the solution with preconceived notions. There's no assumption coming into it. There are no preconceived fraud boxes. We have very strong visual cues that allow the investigator to see data instead of looking at reports visually is very, very strong and much more powerful than looking at tons of reports and trying to figure out trends and analysis and paradigms. And we also proactively engage the investigator through alerts that find those details, sift them out of the haystack, and push them to the investigator. And I'll show you this in just a second in our demo. So just a little bit about our solution is that there is no hardware to install. There are no software patches. It's all in the cloud. We feature prepayment analytics as well as post-payment analytics, looking at things over time on the back end, looking at things inside a provider's profile, looking at things inside the patient's profile over time, as well as we have the front-loaded flags that attempt to stop payments before they're made. So we analyze the beneficiaries, we analyze the providers, we analyze the claimants if it's an UI or the companies, looking for all those long-term trends, looking for the short-term analysis that can actually lead to more enhanced fraud detection. And it usually takes about 3 to 4 months for us to build these models on a state-by-state or an agency basis. So the models are absolutely unique to your specific data set that we actually digest and consume. and then produce those models. What you're seeing on the right-hand side is what we're going to jump into in just a second with the dashboard, and I'll explain some of these features to you. So some of the areas that we're currently in, unemployment insurance, we were just recently awarded a competitive bid for the state of Iowa to deploy in the UI market. Also in Medicaid, from the state and local market, the public housing vertical is very strong. Future models, because the technology is so broadly applicable to many different public benefit verticals, such as WIC, revenue tax, and we're also getting into private healthcare as well. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly just get over to the demo. And let me log in here. This is exactly what an individual user would see. And I want to step you just through a very limited demonstration of some of the capabilities as we're looking at the dashboard. So as I mentioned, we proactively engage the investigator. So using the Google API, using the algorithms, the predictive analytics, we're actually developing proactive alerts and pushing these to the investigator. On the right-hand side, you'll see some of the visual detection or the mapping. Down below that, you'll see key performance indicators. These monitor the overall health of the system. And then also charts to the left on the bottom down here. So what we're going to do is just jump into a few of these areas. Let me just show you some of the basic capabilities of the system. Obviously, there are way more advanced capabilities that I'm going to show today. And if you follow up with us, we'll be happy to schedule a private demo for you and show you some of those capabilities. But essentially what we're looking at is a Google map. This is all demo data. But what I want to just talk to you about is a simple visual cue that alerts us to something that we have, which is a vexing problem across the nation, which is drug diversion. So here we have data geocoded for all the participants and the claims in the system. And we're looking at patients in green, pharmacies in yellow, providers in blue. And we're looking at simple drug diversion. So we can tell that these people were traveling great distances to see providers listed in blue and then getting their prescriptions filled in other areas of the state. Very huge issue. We can then look at something along the lines of doctor shopping. So these simple maps can pull this information up very quickly. Again, this is just demo data. But what you're looking at are a number of visits in a particular quarter. And we can slide this and look at different areas, see how many folks may be visiting more doctors during a quarter, getting different types of alerts, that sort of thing. So the patients in green, providers in blue, and we can zoom in on any of these and get a real nice profile of what these folks are doing. Providers by billed amount, pulling these up again. Who are the major contributors in the state? Not necessarily from fraud, but where are they drawing their patients from? So very quickly I can access this information, make some merit level determinations, draw some reasonable inferences from what I'm seeing, and then possibly open an investigation into any one of these individuals because I'm not liking what I'm seeing very quickly from the visual cues. But I want to take you into a little bit more in-depth look at individuals from the provider side and also the patient side. And so just as we look at the very top list here, this was proactively sent to us by the system. This provider is actually exceeding his peer score, and there's a lot of other flags that this particular demo-based provider was caught on, but we'll just start with the first one that's listed here. And so what you're actually looking at is the provider profile provided by the system, again providing several different Google tools that are bringing to bear information relative to this individual. So we've got the individual here, we have a profile of this individual's background, we have a profile of the business itself, so we can pull up very detailed information on what this person may be doing. These are just some of the indicators provided in the demo system, a lot more provided in the production system. But we can look at the claim frequency, how much he's being reimbursed, his billed amounts, these sort of things. Get some good indicators of what's happening here from his profile perspective. We can also take a look at charts, get an idea of his pharmacy claim volume, the claim frequency, the amount that he may be billing, his narcotics quantity, his reimbursement trends, these sorts of things. Get a very good idea of what's happening inside this profile. But one thing that the map is actually alerting to us is the provider is actually having some patients that are traveling to him from a pretty good distance. So we want to assess whether or not this is an anomaly or actually if this is a trend. So these are folks that are traveling over 500 miles. And let's just move the slider down and let's populate the rest of the map with people, and we see, yes, there are in fact lots of people coming from all over the state to see this particular provider. So let's just keep moving it down. Again, he's located in Miami. There could be, major medical center down there that these folks are traveling to. But actually, what is actually going on here is that folks are traveling from all over the state, it looks like. So we may want to take a little closer look, zoom into his local area within 8 miles or so, and see what we have. And actually, we only see a few patients coming from his surrounding area. So then let's switch the map and look at it a little bit differently, and let's cluster those patients. And we see that his patient base is definitely coming from out of the area. Now, this is highly suspect information. So we want to try to confirm some of this with some additional inferences that can be drawn. So the system, as I showed you originally, was flagging just off of one issue. But now we look into the provider's profile, and we see that there are lots of other flags that are coming out of this individual. So he's got lots of drugs going out the door, lots of narcotics. We've also got some doctor shopping flags that are very interesting that we want to evaluate. We can click on any of these, and we can actually see what's going on, how many flags this guy has been hit with by the system. And an investigator may not have actioned on any one of these, and he may be looking at this individual's profile over time. So again, we'll go ahead and click on this guy, bringing the power of Google to bear on the problem. We've already looked at his provider profile. So let's save the investigator some time, and let's bring him down to Street View and take a look at this particular practice and see what's going on. So here we are. Here's the practice. Again, this is just a demo practice. This is not real. But we can actually see that this particular practice has bars on the windows. It's next to a transmission shop, and I don't know if you can tell, but there's some graffiti down here on the wall. So this is not something that a Medicaid patient should particularly be traveling several hundred miles to take their kid to. So this would be something that we would definitely want to look further into and do some additional evaluation of what's actually happening with this physician. And then we would also want to look at his patient base and maybe click on some of these folks and see what's happening with them. So let's head back to the dashboard, and we'll look at things, the main screen on the dashboard, and we'll look at things from the patient perspective as well. So as we're doing this, here's another alert for a patient here who visited 5 primary care physicians in the past 5 days. This could be evidence of doctor shopping. We can also evaluate, as I showed you earlier, providers visited in a particular quarter, and we can move the slider and find individuals that may be doing a good deal of travel. And the reason why we're looking for this, just as we are looking for drug diversion, is that what we're actually looking for is collusion among the different parties that are engaged in illicit activity inside a program. And oftentimes what we find is that the individuals that are engaged in this level of activity in one program are also the bad actors that are involved in another public benefit program. And usually, as any law enforcement officer will tell you, that it usually revolves around the same 10% of the population committing almost 90% of the crime. So as we focus in on this individual here, who is noted for seeing lots of primary care physicians in the past 30 days, what we're able to see is a little bit of a breakdown on their financial information, very important. It's a significant amount of money moving through somebody's financial accounts who's in Medicaid, well beyond their peer. We're also looking at their income score. We're looking at their payments, excluding real estate. We're looking at their assets, some of their billed amounts that may be occurring, and we can also evaluate that beneficiary's monthly payments and some other charts relative to this individual. So again, this would be somebody highly suspect that an investigator would want to take a look at and then explore the links of this person's relationships with the providers that they may be seeing, because they may be involved in something a little bit larger along these lines. Something else that I want to show you is we look at some of these indicators down here, or these are called KPIs, or key performance indicators. They monitor the overall health of the system. These can be custom configured to provide just about any metric that you may want to monitor. So from the provider, patient, or if this was in the UI space, you would have these as claimants and businesses. So we can take a look at a particular provider metric as it's flagging there is some level of activity, and we can see the specialties broken out. We can see that pediatricians are definitely having some issues, and we can click on these and see some of those individuals that are potentially having some suspect activity going on. And again, this is one that we just took a look at. This is all demo data, just want to remind everyone. So we can evaluate very closely what's actually happening inside this practice. We can also, oops, let me head back over to the patient side. We can also look at particular patients and see if any of them are raising some pretty tremendous flags, which this one is. And these patients are all gridded in an income and asset eligibility or determination grid. We can click on any of these boxes and see who's giving us problems that we may want to evaluate further from an investigative standpoint. So let me take you back to the home screen. And just another capability that is very strong is that, I mentioned that we want to provide a lot of strong visual cues. We want to proactively engage the investigator. So we're doing that through alerts, but there are also other capabilities that can be customized on the dashboard on an individual basis. So as you're looking at these indicators that are on the screen, we can also add additional widgets that I may want to monitor. So we'll just move some eligibility grids or other determination solutions to the home screen. We'll add it on here, and that way I'm actually now looking at other indicators that are on my home dashboard, and I can move these around. I can custom configure stuff to my liking, however I would like to have the maps or the information positioned on the screen so that it is most relevant to me. So just as you're familiar with your Android smartphone and being able to move apps around, you can definitely custom configure any sort of application that you would like on the screen. Another activity that is very compelling is that oftentimes, in the fraud business, unfortunately, the news will report some level of fraud before we're actually able to uncover what's going on. This has been a hallmark of many different programs for many, many years. So when we see news reports or we want to understand what may be happening with somebody that maybe called in and provided a tip on an individual, well, we can actually input that person's name into the dashboard and pull up their profile. So what we'll do over here is we'll just say, yep, we had a provider who was listed in a newspaper ad, and we'll just type in his name, pull him up, and there's his profile right away, and we can immediately see what may be happening with this particular individual. So there is a tremendous amount more to show you from the dashboard. Obviously, we'd be happy to set up a time with you to further discuss this information, but this is just a very limited demonstration of some of the more basic level capabilities that are embedded in our solution. And so with that being said, thank you for your time.
Hey, we appreciate it, Bill. That's good insights there. And we do have some questions you were just bringing up that sometimes media alerts us to some of these fraud issues. First, CT bringing up CNN recently did a fraudulent claim issue on rehab centers. And we have a lot of folks, and I'll toss a couple of these off to you. But do you see that could be an environment, a vertical where this could play as well, fraud within rehab?
Yeah, that's a great one. The answer is absolutely yes. The technology is applicable across really any public benefit space. Whether it's Medicaid or housing, or for the report that was recently released, whether it's the alcohol drug rehab program. We evaluate a tremendous amount of data points on any set that we're looking at, and we're able to find a lot of those needles in the haystack. We also run, criminal backgrounds, those sorts of things. So a lot of the problems that the program was suffering from, definitely we would have been able to find them and proactively alert, the investigators of some of the activity that was going on there. No question.
Gotcha. On the Google blog, and folks can just do a quick Google search. Google Enterprise Blog is what you want to search if you want to read more about this. But the Iowa Workforce Development Agency and Pondera are now working together here. Tell us a little bit about that win for you guys.
Sure. That was a recent competitive procurement that we won with Iowa Workforce Development. And what we saw today was obviously the Medicaid demo, where we were looking at beneficiaries and providers. In the UI space, what we're actually evaluating are businesses and claimants, and looking at claims, trying to engage the flags that you saw from the Medicaid perspective, putting those flags on the forward-looking side of claims payments, as well as looking at folks that are in the system or have been in the system for a very long time, and evaluating businesses as well. To produce metrics and flags, and really bringing value to the data that IWD has, so they have a better handle on what's actually occurring inside their program, and are able to proactively go after those that may be attempting to defraud it.
Do you have, and we're a little early on here, but do you have any feedback from investigators or teams that have said, hey, this is the amount of time that we've saved, the amount of effort we've saved by being able to do this? I can only imagine, again, I think the Street View gave a great example. You see a seedy neighborhood, and you got all sorts of people supposedly going down there for some type of service. That causes a red flag. In the past, maybe someone has either had to do that on their own outside of the system, or it could have involved travel. So I'm assuming a lot of
Mhm.
time saving for these investigators.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And I think the time saving not only comes from those sorts of tools, but moving away from a lot of the paper and the reports and the volume that is just simply sent to these people on a regular basis. So moving things more into the visual space and being able to detect trends almost instantly to see that something is not right is a tremendous amount of time saved. So yes, the effort, the ability to focus resources on a problem, be able to identify it quickly, all produces time savings.
And that visualization for all of us, and especially for a trained investigator, they can start seeing patterns. So I'm also assuming that if they were start looking at a case, if they see these patterns that end up, say, a false positive type of idea, right, where it might have taken them a lot longer going through all the paperwork investigation to come to the conclusion that no, nothing really bad is going on here, so much easier to see those patterns in a visual dashboard type manner.
That's exactly right. So, in any sort of office out there that's engaged in program integrity, you get tremendous numbers of tips. And being able to consume and digest those tips rather quickly so you can separate the wheat from the chaff is a very important process. And that really involves doing a merit determination on the information that you've received. Because oftentimes the information that you get in is rather vague, and you need to see if there may be something there. Somebody's calling for a particular reason, or writing in to let you know of something. So being able to use these tools to quickly determine that yes, there is something there. I've been able to do a merit determination. I need to open an investigation. Moving that process from 30 or 60 days down to maybe a day or two is quite significant.
Again, early on here, but have there been any feedback or anything you know of in the works in terms of policy changes that could be coming about because now the investigators have a more powerful tool? I guess the idea I'm thinking of is maybe delaying payment by X period of days so an investigator could do a quick investigation, as opposed to, hey, they send that money out there and then an agency has to go back and try and recollect that, get it from the bad actors, give it to the people that really deserve the monies.
Yeah, I think unfortunately that state laws may have some catching up to do with the technology. To answer your question directly, is that a lot of states have very prompt payment laws for good reason to get benefits out to those who need them right away. So there are sometimes built-in hindrances to be able to make those determinations. But the technology is there to accomplish this task, and there are certain internal policy changes that can be made that don't necessarily affect that issue, but things can be sped up. You can do merit determinations faster. We can tackle problems faster. So reworking internal processes is something that can definitely be modified.
Talk to me ever so briefly here, Bill, then we'll probably be wrapping up this session and get Bill along. He's going to be joining one of these scheduled chats in the networking lounge, so you can look for that. That'll be kicking off in 2 or 3 minutes from now. Training for an investigator. It looked like it was a very intuitive type of interface, very simple. Again, one of the themes we've been talking about is taking what we all know as end users using Google search technology or maps, and then just bringing that securely into a government space. Training, I'm assuming, is not a big fat hairy deal at all here.
Yeah, that's a fundamental problem with a lot of systems that are out there is that they get implemented, and sometimes even after 9 months or a year, people are still trying to figure out how to find information. A lot of the information in our dashboard, or if not all the information in our dashboard, is designed to be very quickly accessible so that someone can make very quick determinations and not get mired down in months of training and basically not using the system. Because they have to spend more time doing that, and quite honestly, they were, somewhat effective with the old way. So that makes newer technologies really difficult to implement, and it makes people not want to use them. So we had not only a fundamental design change with the information that's being presented and how people are able to access it, but also what is displayed so that training is reduced. In fact, I think probably a lot of people saw the presentation today and said, hey, I could do that right now. I could become an investigator. So it is a game changer, as you put it in the very beginning.
All right. Hey, great way to kind of take it back to the beginning, wrap things up there. Bill Stewart from Pondera Consulting. We really appreciate you being on board here with us, Pondera Solutions there. And again, he's got a scheduled chat coming up in the networking lounge, so check in with him on that. He'll be there for about a half hour. Then come on back, 11 a.m. Pacific time. We're going off the grid. We talked yesterday a great deal about the use of maps. You even saw it here, how Google Maps can be integrated into Pondera's solution here. We're going to be talking about how to use those maps offline and still be very effective, especially when it comes to emergency services and things like that. So that's coming up at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Also, keep your eye on some of the marquee notices that are coming through the virtual environment. That's going to alert you to other chats and things that are going on. Of course, we've got our partners, which we appreciate being on board for these 2 days. Visit their booths. There are other white papers, case studies, things that you can get from their booths. Google booth as well has a lot of that information. So take some time, visit the virtual environment, join us back here in about a half hour, and we'll continue our Hangout series.